Awesome. Okay, well, welcome back to our third in the series of community conversations for 2024. This one is No One Else Will Do It, Caring for Us as Shit Hits the Fan. So it's something that Black and Brown communities have a long legacy of doing. Community care started in our communities. It's a way of engagement and a way of life that for many of us, we still hold on to from our ancestors. And so we're really excited to be joined by all these amazing people that do this work in the community. And we're going to get started. So I'll start with introducing myself. I'll pass it over to Stephanie. We'll share a little bit of information on land and labor acknowledgement, and then we'll introduce those that are going to engage in the conversation. So my name is Brianna. I use they pronouns. I'm the director of programming here at the Uprise Collective. I forgot what I did for a second. Go ahead, Stephanie.
My name is Stephanie. My pronouns are she and her. I am the Uprise Collective's Director of Operations, and it is wonderful to be in community with you today.
So for those of you that don't know about the Uprise Collective, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We serve all over actually, but we are located in the Portland metro area in Oregon. And we do equity and liberation work in the community, which looks all kinds of ways. We do inside and outside systems work, and our inside system work helps pay for programming like this, our outside system work. So we're really excited to be able to bring this conversation to folks. This is the filming for the conversation, and it'll be available on our YouTube page as soon as Stephanie gets around to having time to edit it and put it up. So it'll be fun to see later on as well. These conversations tend to live in the community. They're hard to have. And we're just really excited to be able to engage in this way. So before we get started though, it's a good opportunity for us to kind of take a deep breath and ground with one another. So let your shoulders relax. You're all here because you're amazing. Even the audience. Relax the tension out of your jaw. And just be together for a moment. And we're going to do a land and labor acknowledgement. We're going to call into the space those that have come before us, those that continue to do the unending work of resisting colonization since it began. We call into the space specifically in the Portland metro area, the Chinook, the Cowlitz, the Clackamas, the Kalapuya, and the many other communities that lived and loved and worked up and around this area and continue to do so. We also want to call into the space our stolen, kidnapped, and enslaved African siblings who were brought to this country, whose stolen labor was used to build the wealth of this country while being systemically barred from retaining that wealth. And as we mentioned in every other space, it's not at the exclusion of other communities. It's really because this conversation and the foundation of this country and all the systems that were built on top of it were built on stolen land and stolen labor. And if we can start there and we can start the conversation there, then we can begin to unpack things and engage intentionally with how we want things to look different. And so that's what this conversation is about. And that's what we hope we can continue to talk about as we know that we engage in resistance work and care is part of that resistance work. So Steph, do you want to share a little bit about ComCon, which is
sure.
the way to call this?
ComCon, that's how we talk about it internally, but community conversations. We this year have had a conversation on voting, to vote or not to vote, what that means in Black and Brown communities, our relationship with legislative systems, for better or for worse, voting as a harm reduction tactic, voting as part or not part of liberatory praxis. We also had a conversation about working outside of systems and what it means to organize and mobilize, what the sort of machinery of that is when we're working through very real human hearts and minds in the face of systems that are constructed to harm us. And this particular conversation is about care. As we think about the tapestry of social change work, whether you're working inside or outside of systems, no good movement across time has discounted care. So it behooves us, as we're having conversations about how to do this stuff and how to do it sustainably, it behooves us to have conversations about care and to center care in everything that we do, both self-care and community and collective care and mutual aid. So what is community conversations? It is about building knowledge together. It is about taking all of those feelings and wonders and questions and reflections that we have in our bodies and learning about how we build language around those things, how we talk about them and articulate all of those things. And not only how we articulate them in the spaces where we already claim membership, but how we have those conversations across community, how we have those conversations to build coalition. That's what community conversations is about. It's about building a liminal space where we can actually build some collective knowledge and understanding around the pieces of social change work that require our attention and intentionality. How's that feel, Brianna?
That was perfect. Thanks, Steph.
Great.
So we're going to invite all of you to share, as I mentioned, a little bit about yourself, your perspective, your cultural background, anything you feel important to share with folks. And then we're going to ask a grounding question and we'll go from there. So whoever wants to go first, it's a great opportunity to share.
Well, I assume I'll kick off the introduction. I was waiting for Professor Steve. Well, since he started the last time, I'll start this time. Again, this is our second appearance today. We had a tremendous, wonderful discussion before, and we're just so happy to be here. I'm Dr. Saturu Net of the Black Panther Party Alumni Legacy Network. I handle a lot of the network operations and also original member of the Black Panther Party from 1968 up until 1980. For 14 of the 16 years, I was in the Black Panther Party in terms of its development, in terms of all the things that we created, and all the track record of the work that has been documented, as well as our global impact, which still is very, very present and alive and well today. So again, I joined in 1968, but before that, I was a member of Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which had its roots in the South. And an interesting fact that a lot of people never knew, that the original idea of a Black Panther Party came from the South because it was used, the symbol of the panther, as a voting symbol. And for those that don't know, it was the original version of the panther was created out of Clark College, now Clark University, by 3 women, 2 Black women and 1 white sister. And the panther was different versions, would be standing, crawling, growling, but the symbol was used as a voting concept. And in the South, so you'll know, during the Civil Rights era, the buses, and you wonder why they burnt the churches, because they were voting hubs where the civil rights workers who came from the North, 99% white students, would load up those buses for potential voters. And where they would go, the voting poll would have the symbol of the Black Panther. The other folks, the supremacists, would have the white rooster. Well, the symbol of the panther eats the rooster. And there's a big historic billboard that says, pull the lever, vote, and go home. In other words, so I just wanted to fill that in where I started with that concept. 1967, again, I was downtown Sacramento, senior cut day, 2 weeks before graduation. I see Ronald Reagan being whisked off. Had a long relationship with Governor Reagan before he became president. Went down 100 feet down the opposite direction and saw a group of people go in the building. That day changed my life completely. I'm looking at these people. I didn't know who they were. Bobby Seale, Little Bobby Hutton, Emory Douglas, and the Forte brothers, as they call them, many others. But just so you know, to set the stage, there were only 5 original party members because they were local to Oakland. The rest were men and women, and yes, women, they never filmed the women, but men and women who were from the community to stand upon this right to defend themselves, to stop the Mulford Act, which was directed toward the Black community. Just to let you know, You think it's horrendous now? There were no police commissions. There was nothing. There were no attorney general. Nobody would come to the aid of the Black community in particular and anyone else who was oppressed when there was a matter of murder and direct police brutality by those entities. So I joined the party in the next year in 1968. I was still going to school and college. My responsibility was to organize the campuses, BSUs, and other organizations reflecting the ethnic makeup, progressive organizations. We all came under the collaborative. That was my first experience of a collaborative. In 1969, I was running track and field. We orchestrated the movement, which didn't turn out the way that it was supposed to be as far as the Olympics, when Tommy Smith and John Carlos raised their fist. That wasn't the original plan, but shortly thereafter, 1969, we were getting ready for a major event. The coach came and said, "You have visitors from the FBI." They said, "You can go anywhere in the country if you'd like to, but if you don't stop organizing, you will suffer the consequences." That was the pinnacle point for me. I made a decision to continue. And I remember that coach hugging me and saying, "You stand by your principles." 1969, I was in the office in Sacramento, Father's Day, never will forget, youth celebration. We were one of the first officers attacked by COINTELPRO. And then that December, they went to LA and marched across America. I was then transferred to Central Headquarters in Oakland. And there I was part of the original security with Central Headquarters, traveling with national leaders, as well as part of the Black Panther Party singing group, which is a book out called The Lumpin'. There also was instrumental, and I'm just giving the highlight concept, was instrumental in working with various organizations in terms of creating our collaboratives, from the American Indian Movement to United Farm Workers to the Brown Berets to the Young Lords to the Young Patriots and many, many other entities far beyond that, not only here, but across the world. We realized then that we had organizations had followed the example of the Black Panther Party, the movement in England, the Panther movement, all of Europe, when Bobby Seale was arrested, supporting. And of course, that's when we came out with that song, "Bobby Must Be Set Free." The Dravidian in India party, did you know that we had 2 chapters in Israel, in Tel Aviv, as well as Jerusalem? And they were refugees that had come from Morocco and Algeria, the wretched of the earth. Their main concept is, we want decent housing, fit for the shelter of human beings. So we were so honored to learn that this concept of collaboration, of looking at the same things that affected us, had affected the world and many nations and world leaders who were against what we see happening here in America on a continuous basis. So I was part of the Oakland Community School as an instructor, which won an award in California in 1977, California State Legislature. Each one reach one, each one teach one. The world is your classroom. The only school to ever win that citation, even to this day, for educational excellence and teaching our children 2 languages, sciences, everything that we were at that point in time. And that's just an overview. You want more? We always encourage everyone. You can go on our website, bppaln.org, our Instagram, bppaln, keeping it simple. There's other entities we use. And also, you can Google my name, as well as I know what Professor Steve, and a ton of information will come up. But I just want to give that overview as we get into the program. And we are amazingly honored ourselves to be amongst this new wave we call the second great gathering of a generation, an intergeneration of conscious people like yourselves.
All right, Doc, I'll come up next. All right. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Professor Steve McCutcheon, originally from the Baltimore chapter of the Black Panther Party, reorganized in 1968. And one thing about this is that 1968 was the first year that the Black Panther Party expanded outside of California. first chapter outside of California was the Seattle chapter. And eventually, Elmer Dixon became the coordinator of the Portland chapter of the Black Panther Party. So from there, from the West Coast Black Panther Party spread to the Midwest, opening up the Illinois chapter, Kansas City chapter. Briefly, we had an Iowa chapter, Denver chapter, and continuing west to the East Coast, Boston, New Haven, the New York State chapter, Philadelphia, and Baltimore came in during that period before the end of 1968 as one of what is considered the charter members of the Black Panther Party before the end of 1968, which happened due to the number of informants and agents that were sent into party offices, into the communities to discredit, undermine the efforts of the Black Panther Party, the early organizing efforts of the Black Panther Party. And to sort of circumvent this, the party mandate was to stop opening new chapters in the Black Panther Party at the end of 1968. But eventually the party, we did implement national committees against fascism, national committees against fascism, which became our NCCFs, which evolved into chapters of the Black Panther Party. 1968 to 1972, the Baltimore chapter, as many of the chapters, newly developed chapters on the East Coast, experienced the brunt of the federal government, FBI terror, and the local governments to disorient us and to divide us from the community. We were able to persevere, however, and along at the same time, we have to remember that our chief theoretician, co-founder Huey P. Newton, and chairman and co-founder Bobby Seale were also being imprisoned during that period of time between 1968, 1969, into 1970, when Huey was released, August 1970. And then that following year, in 1971, Chairman Bobby Seale was released from prison after being acquitted of charges in New Haven, Connecticut. Once they reunited and had time to reconsider the path and the direction of the party, they understood that they wanted to consolidate chapters of the party from around the country, first for political education reasons, also to bring together the different talents and skills that were in the different chapters, and that them had developed new programs in the individual areas that weren't in California. So with that combination of talents coming from around the country, it was a consolidation of the chapters, and many of the members arrived from the different chapters around the country. I and members of the Baltimore chapter, we arrived here in 1972. March 1972 is when many of us came, the last of us came to California. And this was the week before our first community survival conference. This was a 3-day event held in East Oakland, West Oakland, and Berkeley. And at the finale of that event, this is where Bobby Seale had announced that we were going to give away 10,000 bags of groceries with a chicken in every bag. And also at that event, this is when he announced in 1972 that he was throwing his hat into the arena to run for mayor of Oakland in the 1973 campaign. So during that period of time, I was getting my feet on the ground, becoming inaugurated to the different procedures and protocols of with different comrades from around the country that I was first introduced to at the West Oakland Community Center. there, which was right around the corner from our central headquarters at that point, which was at 1408 Peralta Street in West Oakland. From West Oakland, I was eventually signed to central headquarters to work in the printing cadre along with Benny Harrison and one of my comrades in Baltimore, and to learn how to operate an offset printing press. Next major assignment came in 1973, working on the opening of the Oakland Community School at 6118 East 14th Street or 6118 International Boulevard now, working on that, and then eventually being assigned to teach math to intermediate grade level students and physical education. So that was a opportunity that I had been looking forward to all along, as teaching was one of the areas of my lifelong interest. While teaching math and physical education, I had also been training in Taekwondo at Grove Street College, which is the predecessor to today's renowned Merritt College, and that and located now in the Oakland Hills. So while there, and in conjunction with the time and the assignments that I had with as a member of the cadre of the Oakland Community School, I developed the community martial arts program, which brought in students who were over the age of our Oakland Community School students, brought them into a program that included up to 18-year-olds and even adults participated in the program. That program became a success, drawing from all the areas of East Oakland, not only young people, but the parents who eventually came in to see what their young children were doing and to support not only them, but the efforts of the Oakland Community School and the other social, cultural, and educational programs of the Oakland Community Learning Center. So those two activities, along with the other tasks and responsibilities assigned as a member of the Black Panther Party, those were part of my lifestyle during that period from 1972 up until 1980. So during that time, many of those students there, we all dispersed after a period of time, but we have come together in 1987. We came back together and reformed and renamed the martial arts program, and we continued that until 2004. So many of those students, they have gone on into other areas. Now some still live out here in this area where I am now, and others are in Oakland. Others have dispersed. I don't know where they are, but that was part of the learning process. And that particular martial arts program, it was picked up and adopted by our newly opened LA chapter at that time, and by members who had left, by one particular member who had left the Oakland area, Brother Stan McKinney, who went back to Chicago, who was a member of the Chicago chapter, and opened up a similar program there. And that reference was due to the initial beginnings of the original OCLC martial arts program, which was again one of the featured youth programs of the Oakland Community Learning Center. Following the Black Panther Party, going back to school, and then finding what I wanted to do to continue next, I came back to education and wound up teaching for the Oakland Public Schools, and initially being assigned to the Office of Indian Education. There I met a wonderful staff of our colleagues there who had been assigned to different schools for the Native American population in Oakland. And my primary assignment was at Carl Monk Elementary since that was the largest population of Native American students in Oakland during that period of time. I was able to learn and exchange cultural ideas, some of my background from the party, how that was able to flow into their particular understanding in terms of their cultural and social understandings, all the while trying to teach math to Native American students who many, because of state standardized tests, had been graded at the basic, below basic, and far below basic testing levels. We had a few who were in the proficient and advanced levels, but the majority of the Native American students were not succeeding. And I, as a liaison between the Office of Indian Education and the intervention teacher, filled the breach in terms of math intervention and the success of students there from the Native American population. This I enjoyed until I eventually transferred to Castlemont High and taught world history and ethnic studies there. So much of the studies there that through the years, they all came together. They were utilized at different times based on the topics, based on the student population. And since I was in special education, so I had the ability there to design lesson plans that could deviate and incorporate particular areas that I wanted to emphasize. So following the experience at the Oakland Community School, this was in and at the Oakland Public Schools in 2015, 2016, next year, that was the year of the 50th anniversary and celebration of the Black Panther Party. Dr. Ned and I were members of the planning and host committee for the 50th anniversary of the Black Panther Party. And remember, that was a 3-day event held at the Oakland Museum. And we had visitors and participants from around the world, from as far away as Australia and New Zealand, a few South American representatives from other European areas there. And the event was a phenomenal success. It was capped off by the Saturday evening dinner out in the yard behind the Oakland Museum there. And that event, many people who came out that I spoke with, when they looked at the audience out there, when they looked at the presentation and the work that had been done that Thursday, that Friday, and that Saturday there at the Oakland Museum, listening to the seminars, the lectures, and the presentation, and the manner in which folks who had left the party in the 70s and 80s come together and were able to pull this off. And most folks that I spoke with, they thought that the budget for this, the planning cost for this was in the millions. No, it wasn't that much. It wasn't that much. No, not going to throw that balloon out there. No, it wasn't that much. We, with the resource due shape, use what we got to get what we need. We were able to bring in the donations, get the financial support, get the human resource support that we needed to pull off a successful and memorable event to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the party, commemorate the different comrades of the Black Panther Party who have come, who have left us since that period of time, and who do continue to carry on in their different communities now. So we were part of that process 8 years ago. And today, coming full circle, Dr. Ned and I here as representatives of the Black Panther Party Alumni Legacy Network. Feet still on the ground. There's still work to be done.
You know, very quickly, I want to mention to everybody, we had people like Danny Glover was our keynote speaker, but he brought a whole entourage of people that you might be familiar with, like a guy by the name of Gavin Newsom, somebody who's right now running for president was present. All these people came to recognize the work that we did. Now, of course, we see people recognize things, but again, turning it back over to our host is like, what effort is being made today? Where are we caring for ourselves? or can we have any dependency on anything outside of the community caring for themselves?
Awesome. Thank you both for sharing. And you've answered the first grounding question. So thank you both for jumping right in and sharing. I want to make sure that we also hear from Shailene and Ty to share intros. And also if you want to answer the grounding question, that would be really great as well. I'll just make sure to say it so you know. So like, what does your work look like in a service to the legacy of community survival? And both both of you already answered that. So Shailene and Ty, who wants to go next?
Hi everyone, my name is Thais Taylor. I also go by Ty. I'm a Black, queer, trans, non-binary trans, disabled femme, and I live in New York. My work is multivarious, from radical education and teaching for social justice to writing poetry, performing storytelling. I would classify my writing as radical as well. I do a lot of community care work. I'm a mutual aid organizer, and I also raise mutual aid for my daily survival. Yeah, I feel like that encapsulates me.
Thanks, Ty. Shailene?
Yeah, I can go next. Hello everyone. My name is Shailene, Shailene Joseph. Pronouns are she, her. I am Aani from Fort Belknap, Montana. And it's a tribal community in north central Montana. So if you look at the state of Montana, I'm at the top in the middle. That's where I'm from on my mom's side. And on my late father's side, I'm Koyukon Athabaskan from Tanana, Alaska. So if you do the hand thing, we're right there in the middle. And that's where I'm from on my late father's side. And those are the two communities that I am accountable to and come from, and where my knowledge base comes from. And so I grew up with the teaching of everything I have comes from others. And so nothing I have is really mine. And a gift isn't a gift unless you give it away. And so that's literally the work that I do, is the things that I've been given. I travel in Indigenous communities and communities of color all over, giving the things that I've been given. And so I work for the Native Wellness Institute. We're a nonprofit. We like to call ourselves a social profit because we benefit society. And I've worked there forever. My boss is also my mom, so she's like my boss in many senses of the word. And so I grew up traveling with her, and now I get paid for it, which is really nice. And so I predominantly work with youth on the occasion. Adults, I enjoy youth a lot more. And no offense to us adults, we're just sometimes, where we're at, and
We're all right.
yeah, and so I get the great privilege of traveling all over and doing the work that I love. I work in a lot of different communities, and I guess it kind of goes into the grounding question. Is one of my mentors, as I had gotten older, one day had asked, like, "Hey, how's your kid doing?" And I was like, "You've known me my whole life, like I don't have kids." And then but they said, "No, the kid inside of you." And he had said that we are every age that we have been before, and every age that we will become. And so to make sure that we feed both, and not to forget to play like a child, and heal those pieces of us, but also to remain a student forever, so that we can be the elders that our communities need. And so part of my job is being a professional kid, which is awesome, and play a lot of games and teach through games. And because it's also a traditional value of the places that I come from, is we would teach through games and through activities. And we didn't have schools necessarily, right? And historically, and if you wanted to learn something, your parent, your caregiver would send you to a specific somebody to learn that skill. and you would carry on time learning from them. And so, you know, when we work in community, we try and follow that same kind of value. And because it's about people, it's about all of us, and we all have important things to give. And that's why we're born to the people that we're born to. And so I hope I answered the question. I also have ADHD, and so, you know, that's just a little heads up if I start kind of like wandering, you know, just be like, hey, over here. But you know, those are that's a little bit about me. I have all brothers. And you might hear me talk about my sister, but that's because my first cousins were really close and we grew up as siblings. And so that'll just be a little explanation for later down the road. But hopefully I answered.
Shailene, we are Black and brown neurospicy people. Tangents are always okay.
I love it. Awesome. I'm in the right place then.
Thank you so much for the gift of your stories and your lives and your work. As we think about care, the relationship that you have had with care in your lives and in your work, what is your relationship with the idea of community care when it comes to social change work? What does it look like? How does it live and breathe? You're welcome to answer this in any order and to have a conversation about this. But as we think about care, we owe the idea of care as we think about it today. We owe that idea to Black queer women, really, giving honor to the Combahee River Collective, giving honor to Audre Lorde and Kimberly Crenshaw, the idea that care is a radical act. And now we have a $10 billion self-care industry, right? This is the masks and the massages and the bubble baths, and right. So what is your relationship with care? How do you conceptualize care, and how does it connect to the revolutionary work that you do?
I think that because of the communities I belong to, they're extra marginalized, you know, being disabled, being queer and trans. There's this aspect, and particularly being disabled and having severe mental illness and experiencing psychosis, there's this isolation that we experience in society that can be more intense. And the disabled community has definitely been dealing with that more so with the COVID-19 pandemic, and, you know, isolating intentionally just to try to stay healthy, and dealing with most of the population not masking, not testing, not taking on COVID precautions. So I feel like there's this idea of finding your people and finding your chosen family and directing care through that, but also there's a sense of connectedness, and that, you know, if you're in the psych ward, your community is whoever's there. To survive the psych ward, you have to form relationships with whoever's there, and there is sacred crypt wisdom that you get from people in the psych ward. You know, from different COVID care actions that involve sending masks to each other, making sure people get more tests, sending care packages for people who are isolating. There's this aspect of who my community is who I choose, but also who I'm forced to make a connection with because of that isolation. You know, I think even spiritually in the Hoodoo community, you know, as we say, making a way out of no way, having a religious perspective or spiritual perspective that also is surrounded by isolation because it's, you know, marginalized identity to be a Hoodoo. There is this sense of connecting with whoever you can and forming resources from who's around you or who you're involved with, who you share beliefs with. And that's innate to the idea of survival and the ways in which, like, for example, Black Indigenous people have been surviving, you know, for all of time.
Ty, hope that's okay. Referring you to as Ty. Ty, what relationship or experience have you had with the existing mental health and disabled community institutions? What cracks do they have? What failures do they have? I believe that, and most people do believe, they're overwhelming and underserved. So do
Um,
you have any relationship or input in terms of how to?
Yes, definitely. So for example, this year with Uprise, I gave a presentation on how to survive psych hospitalizations and how to navigate the system and also kind of stay away from the system. So I feel like I know there's one question about other communities we've connected with. So I do see an overlap, for example, between people who are committed to psych wards or under psychiatric arrest and people who are navigating the prison system, things like that, people who are system impacted. That's one connection. Um, People who are severely mentally ill, connecting with other members of the disabled community. Um, I think that, in the abolition movement, it includes psych abolition now, and there's a lot of work being done. Um, People are even looking to connect those who work in psych institutions and those who are patients there to increase radicalization and to alter the system as it stands. So I feel like abolition is a really important point that is obviously across movements, um, that is becoming more impactful and gaining traction in the severely mentally ill community.
And I think it supports our conversations as we talk about this work, as we talk about building, change across movements and building coalition around the issues that impact us in different and similar ways. I think conversations around the ways that we are similarly impacted and the ways that we can build sort of, a community level response to things that are harming us across systems. So as you think about care, what is care? Is supporting change work care, is understanding how systems impact people who may have different intersecting identities than the ones that I hold. Is that care? Right. So I'm very, very interested in where this conversation is headed. Shailene, Dr. Ned, how's care coming up for you?
Oh, well, in examining that concept and listening to the comments that have been made so far this time, the connectivity aspect is so important where you are. But then the other aspect is the connection of how this affects all of us. In other words, we talked about before the silo aspect. And within that silo, I'm in a caring concept, but how can I connect with everyone else to see that it is not isolated? And then when we talk about mental illness, well, that was one of my, and what I did in my thesis, the whole concept was based upon that. And one thing that we looked at was also the diagnosis of who's diagnosing us, the concept of the environment that we have come from, and that many Black psychologists and therapists are saying, like for Black males, it's the wearing down. I'm sick and tired. I don't have any reason to live anymore. I don't care. I have no love. And you're going to designate me as mentally ill. So those conversations within it, when someone says you are mentally ill, is it because I have succumbed to your diagnosis, or is it part of the environment, the conditions of oppression, the conditions of generations of denial, of living in bleak opportunities that have no end? We experienced that when soldiers came back from Vietnam, and also when people came to the Black Panther Party. We had to deal with all those dynamics in terms of, but one thing that we found out, the first step was of us understanding who we were and caring for ourselves, and then showing them that someone else cared. But also, one of the greatest psychologists that ever lived, as far as I'm concerned, was Malcolm X. When he broke it down in everything that he said and did, and he got the people thinking, why should I feel this way? I have been worn down and taught to feel like I'm mentally ill. I cannot cope with America. I am less than a human being. So therefore, I am going to accept every designation, every name, every jacket. That's who I am and nothing else. So all these concepts. And where's Dr. Ned going with this? For me, and for so many others. I'll tell everybody, if it had been for the Black Panther Party when Martin Luther King was murdered, and a lot of people don't know that he always talked about say it loud, don't get it twisted, I'm black and I'm proud. How I saw him in 1967, I don't know if I'm dating myself, in Sacramento State University, and it was just when Muhammad Ali had refused. He said, I'll go to prison. I'll give up all this money. It's about the people. Now that's self-caring, but also the love and passion for the community. So we asked Dr. King. I said, Dr. King, well, I said this statement to him. We're not going to fight against people who never called us names, who are suffering from the same conditions. Dr. King looked at us and said, do like Muhammad Ali, resist. Do not fight for the injustices of America. Gotta go. His ratings dropped and all that. So the truth of how we saw it and we realized what they're doing and what they continue to do. And we know that in the LGBTQ community, by the way, in 1971, when Dr. Huey P. Newton made his speech, at first got so quiet. And part of the speech talked about how we must support all women. Our women are being demonized, they're being oppressed, they're not being respected. They are leaders, and also about our gay brothers and sisters. They may be the most oppressed of all. We must embrace them and love them. And of course, that was which a lot of people now, even in the vast community of San Francisco, understands that was the beginning of the original Rainbow Coalition that said, we embrace your problems, your issues. We love you. We want you to be as happy in your life as you possibly need to be. But don't you need to eat? Yep. Don't you need a decent house? Yep. Are you getting good education? Oh, heck no. And then within the communities, that the community is no different than the general community, right? You fight the same racism, right? You fight the same stereotypes that you fight as a Black woman in that arena that we face in the same arena here in America. I just thought I'd throw out those concepts there of how we could look at it. And then the other aspect very quickly is, have you ever applied for a study on medicine or anything? They do not choose, and they have admitted, we learned this in the DSM, Diagnosis Manual for Psychology and Psychological Studies and Diagnostics and everything, that they do not do any viable studies. They do not have information on how it affects people of color, whether you're from the Black, brown, Native American community, because they don't understand the oppressive conditions and environment we live in, which shape the way we think.
Hear, hear. And, you know, the legacy of the Black Panther Party still resonates today and beyond, because this is a group and a coalition that institutionalized care in the way that it fed children, in the way that it fed families, in the way that it took care of its seniors, ambulance services, the Oakland Community School, you know, the art and the music and the newspaper and the knowledge sharing. I mean, institutionalizing care, making care live and breathe. Shailene, how does care come up for you?
Oh man, in so many ways. I'm just listening and you know, one of the things that like kind of keeps coming up is when I think about care, especially community care, right? Like it starts with us, because individuals make community, right? And one of my mentors, his name is Charlie Tailfeathers, and he has since passed during COVID. And he was one of those old guys, you know, a veteran, and you know, powwows, and I got to learn a lot from him growing up. And he's like one of those old guys that had, you know, he wore sweats every day. So he had his like everyday sweats and then his like fancy sweats for events. And then he had these really skinny braids, and he would even braid leather into them, and they were still just really skinny. And But I learned a lot from him. And one of the things that he would always say is, you can only give what you have. And so if all you have is burnout, that's what you're giving. He said to be mindful of the way that we feel. He said our people need to know how we feel. There's a really long story, but long story short, he went into ceremony and said, one of the things he came out with is this scale of 1 to 10. And he said that we need to know how we feel. Like 1 is, we're done, we're at burnout, we're not feeling very good. And 10 is we're ready to go, and that we're feeling awesome, we're feeling great, feeling full. And he said to check in with yourself every day throughout the day. Where are you on that 1 to 10? He said it's not about being a 10 every day. It's that on those days that we are a 2, how do we get to a 3 by the end of the day? What are the tools that we have to be able to get ourselves there? And so, when I think about community care, a lot of the work that we do is to know where you're going, you have to understand where you come from, right? And what does that mean on a community level? And so understanding these big terms that get thrown around like historical and intergenerational trauma. But what does that mean for a little brown kid running around, right? Like you can't just throw these words out and be like, okay, like that's why you are the way you are, right? But really, how does it play out in our behaviors? How does it show up in each of us? What are those things that are passed down, whether it's socially constructed or even through our genes or the proteins attached to our genes, whatever it may be, that have gotten us here to today. And a lot of the time, right, like you have historical and intergenerational trauma, but there's the partner to it, right? There's the pair that it goes with is the historical and intergenerational wisdom. What are these good things that have helped sustain us to keep us still here, right? Like I've traveled all over, and even in places like I went to school in LA for a little while, and I had to teach a course, and it was Intro to American Indian Studies. And it's like I had 150 students, and I remember the first day they were like, okay, well, like, oh, the one kid raised his hand. He's like, so where did the natives go? Like, when did they, what was their last years here? And I was like, oh, this is awkward. And I'm like, did you miss introductions? Like, who all of us are? And so like that's how far, right, our education system goes and what it doesn't teach. And it's changed over time, but a lot of these times, like just to be seen, you have to wait till you go to college, if you go to college, right? You don't learn about the histories of what's now known as the Americas. Really, it's kind of like, okay, well, we had Thanksgiving, and oh yeah, well, there was some unfortunate parts, but now this is where we are, right? And so kind of looking at that and unpacking it, and seeing how it affects us today, because you see a lot of movements, or I can even speak, just on, within Indian country, that they're really successful, they're moving, there's amazing things happening, and then it starts to kind of like eat itself up, right? Like the lateral oppression starts to play out, and like those deeply ingrained ideologies of colonization and colonialism start playing out, right? These things that we've been told over time and start to believe, right? We see someone who looks like us and we're like, yeah, you are less than. And so you start to take them down. And Charlie said that's why it's important that we do our work, our homework, and take care of ourselves, because when we take care of ourselves, we know how to take care of others. And inherently, we have that within us. But sometimes the things on the outside are just a little bit louder, right? And we tend to forget. And we would always talk about I'll tell this quick story. When I was really young, and he told me the same story like over and over and over again, and I was like, oh man, like you already told me this story. And he's like, he wouldn't say I know, he would just keep talking. And so I'd sit and listen, and especially if I was fighting with my siblings. And he said, when babies are brought into the world or into a space specifically, he said that people care for the baby, that when they cry, they get fed and held and rocked, and People want to laugh with the baby and take care of them, said because they're that important. And he said, when an elder comes into the space, you get them a chair, ask them if they need food or water, and meet their needs, or exceed them because they are that important. And he said that whether we're in the beginning or we're nearing the end, that nowhere do we lose that we are always worthy of good things, that we need to meet our needs and make sure that we are in a good place. And he would follow that up with, he was like, it'd be like this beautiful teaching. And then he's like, still kind of like the rough and gruff guy. And he's like, so live accordingly and act accordingly. And we're like, yeah, okay. And so he would remind us that that goes for everyone, the person on our left, the person on our right, the person in front of us, the person even that glared at you in the grocery store for no reason, that they are still worthy of good things. And it is only our choice to choose how we either react or respond to, right? And he said, when we're starting to get into those reactive modes, it means that we have to do a little bit more checking in, more, a little more taking care of ourselves, because it means that things are starting to weigh us down, right? And take a toll. He said, it's okay to take a break, that we don't have to always be at a fast pace. And that break could be 1 minute, 2 minutes, and to go outside. And he said, sometimes we forget or we take it for granted, even just seeing a tree, right? And I remembered that when I lived in LA, like I was just in this massive place of concrete, and like, they would plant trees in weird places, and I would just be like, wow, like, you're still really making it here. But their sole purpose, right? Plants, I have a plant right here. Their sole purpose is to live for us. They only speak in the language of service. That is all they are here for, is to recycle the air, or to clean our air, or make places beautiful, right? All of these things that plants teach us is that they're living for others, and that they do their best to be strong and sturdy. And there's many plants that grow and live together because they feed each other. When one has had enough, it will give to the rest. And he would talk about how that's how our community is, that we need to be sturdy and to remember to take care of ourselves, because we can only give what we have, and we want to give good things because everyone is worthy of good things. And he said, when the scarcity thing kind of comes up, or whatever it may be, is that it just means that we have more to learn. And that's how life is always going to be. You're never going to, he said, never be the most educated in the room, because then you'll look like the stupid one in the room. And I was like, okay, got it. He said, you're always a student. And he said, so listen and learn, and find ways that you learn best. Because somebody was saying that they were teaching math, and I was one of those students that just couldn't learn math for whatever reason, or in general, and then found out way later that I have ADHD and I learn very differently, right? But I learn best in community, working with my hands, or doing all of these things, which reminds me that everybody else does too. And difference is beauty, right? And we get to see things that maybe we are not used to, and learn from and learn alongside. And I think with community care, there's so many ways to look at it. And when I think of my favorite kind of community care is sitting in a room with my friends or my family and just like laughing until we can't anymore. And I think that is care. It's in the simplicity. And one of my grandma, who has since passed, she said, then this will be like the last thing, is like, she said, we live in a world that teaches us to complicate everything. And so we need to remember that some things are just not that complex. It's just our brains telling us it is, or it has to be, or it can't be this easy. There has to be a million other things that are going to get in my way. And she said, sometimes we just have to pause and remind ourselves that it's okay if it's not complicated. That's how it's meant to be. That's how it's supposed to be. And when we run into things, there's always going to be a way through. And if that wasn't true, we wouldn't be here today, right? And like even now it's 2024. So you go back 100 years, 1924. That's when Native people became citizens of this country. So 100 years we've been citizens of this country, right? That is not long ago. And so you think about how that has affected each individual community and the ways that that plays out. Like these histories are not far. They're not far away. And when we can come together, and I hear community, sorry, last thing, we're back on the tangents. I think it was last week or whenever, I was up in Seattle at the Palestine Will Live Forever Festival. And one of the things that they had talked about, they said, imagine, this world that we live in now, we can share so much through social media, and it is our choice, right? What we share out. Said that, imagine if back in early colonization days, if there was social media or a way to tell people from far away what was happening here, how many communities could come together to make sure this didn't happen. And another way that, the indigenous communities out on the East could tell on the West, hey, this is what is coming, right? To be able to band together, to work together. They were talking about how we always have the unique opportunity, or we have a opportunity to, even if we are from different communities with different beliefs, is to come together to fight alongside each other. That many of us are fighting the same fight, and when we are together, we're unstoppable. That we become a force so big, and that's why they work so hard to oppress, is because they know the strength that we have when we're together. And so, my grandma would say, if you don't know, take the time to learn, to go meet people, because that is what it is about. It is about people. And the day that we forget that, we've dehumanized ourselves. And so the community care aspect is to make relationships, is to build relationships, and to always feed those. And my other mentor, his name is Gene Tagaban, he said to be mindful of, he said, that voice that we have in our head. And he always says, like, the one that says, what voice? That one. Be mindful of the way that it talks to yourself. If you don't want that voice to talk to the person that you love the most, then some change needs to happen. So it means those outside things are starting to take over. To love yourself, and when we love ourselves, we know how to love others. And just like the plants and just like the water, our first mother, it doesn't deny any of us, right? It doesn't look at the color of our skin or our backgrounds or our income or our any part of our identity, right? We can't step on the earth and the earth is like, nope, sorry, you got to go. Like, it ain't it, right? It doesn't do that. It just accepts you fully as who you are. And so Gene is always reminding us to go outside and learn to love. And that is a way that we can learn, is to watch what the plants do, is to watch what Earth does, because as much as we like really genuinely like take her down, right, build on top of her and contaminate, all she does is continue to still love us in the best way that she knows how. And so, I think of all of that. That's why I'm like, oh, community care. Like, there's so many things that come to mind. And I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to hear from the other panelists in the way that they see it, because it's like, yeah, I totally agree. And we have so many commonalities in the way that care shows up. And I think that's the beauty of conversations like this, or to have interpreters here, to make sure that access is for everyone, and because everyone deserves good things. It goes back to that, being worthy of good things, is that every single one of us in here, our families, our friends, everyone watching, your family and your friends, deserve good things. And that's like at the foundation of everything. So holy smokes. Anyways, long story. Those are the things that I think about with community care.
Let me, if I may, hey, that was right on, Shalene. And let me add something in this respect, that in If you look at the earth, you look at the ground, production from the ground, caring for the earth, okay, caring for what it produces. We're learning from that. We just can't run into an environment and impose our will, our human will on the earth or in the urban environment. Caring, we have to learn. Though that's a symbiotic condition there. In order to care for someone, we have to learn about someone. To care for something, we have to learn about that particular entity. Our understanding, our interpretation of a thing does not matter if we do not learn from it. We have to learn the qualities of a particular environment, particular individuals, particular groups, in order to be able to care, to express that care, to demonstrate that care. When we are in any field of life, whether it's in any of the disciplines, any area of work, any area of activity, if we are motivated towards that, if we are looking into that, if we care about that so much to be involved in it, we have to learn from it. We have to be able to look at the inside of it, the internal, what makes these things tick? What do these things need in order to express sincere care? Everything else is artificial. You're imposing your will. You're imposing your external view on a situation or on others that you do not understand, not concerned with. So where's the care? Where's the care? We can't express care for the community if we don't understand what their needs are, what their interests are. So we talk to people, knock on doors, sit down at picnics with them, meet them where they are, meet a student where they are. Now, you can't run into a classroom. I'm going to teach you math. You have to learn those particular students' method of thinking, their work behaviors, their classroom management behaviors. You have to begin to understand them to get their interest, their motivation. So they maintain, they want that willingness to learn. And you learn from them, we learn from them. That is the care. That is the care. Everything else is abstract in terms of the in terms of the arena of care. Learning from caring, learning is symbiotic. They're one iterations. It's one iteration of the caring process at the interactive level, the personal levels where we interact, and at the community level. If we do not learn from the environment, from the situation we are in, or from the individual that we're interconnecting with, care can't be defined. It can't be accurately expressed.
This is such an important conversation, and things that everyone has shared are just like swimming in my head. There's something, Shailene brought up ADHD, and I'm dyslexic, and that was something that was like really challenging. Math was like impossible for me as a child, until, as Professor Steve just mentioned, somebody found out what I was interested in, and sat me down at a piano and said, "Oh, you can read music, then you know math." Right? And had like an opportunity to like connect in that way, right? Like if we don't know how somebody receives care, if we don't know how somebody learns to engage with another person, we can't actually meet them where they're at. So this is such a great conversation. Thank you so much. I'm gonna ask the next question, and maybe we can see what happens next. I'm gonna skip a little bit, and because we have such a good panel here. We've got folks from different generations. We've got folks with different lived experiences, with different racial backgrounds and disability backgrounds. I'm curious, what does collaboration look like across movements, and what does sustainability look like? And I know, Ty, you've done a lot of work in this area, and I'm wondering if you want to start us off with that.
Yes, I feel like what I've seen in organizing for mutual aid is that collaboration takes an openness to work with people of different skill sets, relying on each other's strengths and working on each other's weaknesses is how we become strongest in community and as leaders in the community. Action is one of the most important things, especially when it comes to things like mutual aid, which is so key to survival in my experience. Community can feel like it's just a word when there's not action behind that community. So if you're in solidarity with me, what are you going to do to make sure I survive? And how do I return that to you? How do I make sure we are all liberated? Right? It's not just your movement or my movement. It's liberation for all. That's what we're working towards. Survival for all. That's what we're working towards. And sustainability with that looks like assessing your capacity, which has been mentioned, and also varying your skill set that you're offering. Centering the skills that you have. A lot of us have mentioned being educators or working with children. Um, I think it's so important to center the skills you already have. You can stretch and learn other skills, but if you start with your strengths, I feel like people are less likely to get burnt out. If we take on the roles where the roles that come most naturally to us and that we have experience in, it's really going to help hinder burnout. And I think when working in community and when organizing, assessing each other's strengths is also helpful. And delegating those skills. I think that when it comes to mutual aid, what's brilliant about it is that it says care is survival. And that may seem obvious to some people, but when we think about all the systems at play that are designed, as Black people, for example, to kill us, right? As disabled people to kill us, right? To take away our sovereignty and things like that, survival is the least you can do and the most you can do in community. I really think it boils down to that.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. I think so many things. I'm like, yes, yes. I think like collaboration, trauma teaches us that that we can't collaborate, that we have to compete, right? We're competing for everything. So the more that we learn about trauma and the way that it plays out in ourselves is that the healing work is about collaboration. And even if it is like within us, like all versions of ourselves. And I think with collaboration across movements, I agree with Ty is looking at your strengths and what are those, while also simultaneously like understanding the way that our trauma plays out in ourselves, right? Like I like a lot of the time I heard someone a few weeks ago talk about oh my gosh, what is triggers, right? And understanding what triggers us. But they said that the things that trigger us, that is our homework, is to do the work on those things. It's not anybody else's homework. Like that's not going to work for us, right? Like we can't expect everyone to know these things, that it's our homework that we have to take care of. And the more that we do and we see the value in ourselves enough to be like, yeah, I am important enough to do my own healing work, that the collaborations kind of become a bit easier. Trauma teaches us don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. And as we start to kind of learn and move through our own healing work, we are expected to, right, talk, trust, and feel. And so like unlearning and relearning how to do things are so important, right? And like unlearning things that we may not even know where they came from. I was just working with some kids, some young people, and I said, where do we learn professionalism, right? Like a lot of the times we're not given a course of like, this is how you be a professional. It's like you walk in and it's like, okay, like fast moving water, we have to just kind of jump in and do what other people are doing. And it's like, okay, I guess this is how you be a professional. And then people will use it against you. And if you do something that, you know, is out of the norm or whatever it may be, like, oh, that's so unprofessional, right? As a way to kind of like put you down. But where do we learn professionalism? It's like a lot of these ideologies of collaboration. Like, what does it look like? What does it feel like? One of my best friends, his name was Josh Cocker, and he had asked me this question that I'm like still thinking about today, and been asking my friends and like and people close to me is, how do you best feel and see and receive support? And so I started to really think about it, and I was like, oh, okay, like and I had answered, and it had taken some time, and he said, because I want to support you in the best way that you feel it, because so many of us feel lonely even when there's a lot of people around, but they're supporting in the way that they see support. If we are a supportive person, we are supporting others in the way that we see support. And so that question makes it not about us, but about the person or the community we are trying to support, right? Centering them. And so I started, you know, asking the people around me, like, you know, how do you best receive or feel support? And it has changed so many dynamics and relationships in my life, because we get to know each other on a whole different level. And so when we were up in Seattle, and you know, we were having all these conversations about you know, different indigenous communities, and the Palestinian community and the Native community, like, how do we best see support? What are our commonalities, and how can we you know, rise up together? You know, it is about you know, survival for all, and really thriving for all. Like, we deserve to thrive. And so what does that look like, and how do we get there? And so, you know, when I think about like collaboration across movements, it is about learning, like had been mentioned before. It is about taking the time and seeing the value, and looking at everyone's strengths, and like not in a way that's like, oh, they have a strength that we need in our movement, right? It's ours, the collective, because it's when we start to kind of silo, right, we don't get as far, and we kind of run into the same things. And that's why history is important. It's like you see the same things that history is doing over and over and over again, and it just keeps on happening. It's like during COVID and then the pandemic, like you go out now and it's like we all have forgotten that we survived a pandemic, and that this massive thing that interrupted our lives happened. But my mom is always saying, my mom is just like, I describe her as like a little ball of abundance, just like, you know, floating along. And she always asks, like, what did you learn from that time? What were the abundance-based things that you took away from that time to help carry you forward? And she said, yes, it was a challenging time, but what did we learn? Because if we're not learning, then when that comes again, we will just struggle again. And so to have these conversations with everyone is, you know, this support piece, is because if we end up having to go through a pandemic again, how can we best support one another to make sure that we all can continue our journeys forward, and that they don't have to end early, and to be able to have and hold space for ourselves, but for others, to care in a way that maybe we wished somebody would care for us, but to really learn how to do that, and how to be able to hold somebody is you know, some of the thoughts that I had. And I just love the looking at the abundance in everyone, and carrying our abundance forward to help and add to is one of the things I heard from Ty. So that was really cool.
I want to, if it's possible, to look at this idea of thriving A lot of people point out, even in my own mutual aid organizing, Ty, you deserve to thrive. You deserve to go past survival. But what I want to interrogate is if it's possible to thrive while other people are not even able to get by. How I think that I understand, especially as marginalized people, that we have a right to joy, we have a right to rest, and things of that nature. But I'm questioning when it comes to abundance, right? If someone has financial abundance, mutual aid says to decide how much of that abundance you can share and share that so other people can survive. And so, even with the election and Kamala Harris and Black Girl Magic and Black Girl Joy as being like a platform to support, how can I do that when there's a genocide going on in Palestine and other people are getting massacred, right? This question of who actually has a right to thrive, who are the people who are already thriving and have more access to thriving, who are the people who are not even granted the chance to thrive, and also the thought that interdependence, which is one of the disability justice principles, is actually thriving. Liberation is thriving. Living in communion with the earth is thriving. So also challenging how we view thriving. If my homies are incarcerated, how can I thrive? So just challenging that idea. And I'm interested in how other people are considering that.
Yeah, and I'm very interested in the members of the Black Panther Party Alumni Network, as you have experience, as many of us do, decades and decades of experience when it comes to collaborating across movements, building sustainability across movements, and grappling with the idea that we are all not in the same boat here, right? Like not in the same boat, but it is in the same storm, right? So like, what does it mean to support liberatory praxis when that idea of thriving is something that people are coming at from different perspectives?
If I may weigh in, and listening to both the last two presenters, and we hear this a lot, and I think I mentioned this in our last discussion. I work with a group of young people, and which we do from 9 years old, intergeneration, all the way up, even to our generation. And what they would always tell me, so this is what a collaboration is about. We've never worked together. And those on the panel now, we are coming from a position of decades of documentation, and the only thing we're ever presenting is our experience and knowledge, and this is what we pass on. I don't know if you guys knew that we, in collaboration with our global collaborations, we had a bona fide embassy in Algeria, which was recognized by the UN regularly. When Yasser Arafat and the PLO, we meet with them regularly. Our brothers and sisters from South Africa. Somebody mentioned earlier about people coming and meeting face to face. We had to do a lot of that, even though there wasn't a lot of technology. But if you look at number 10, we want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace, and people's control of modern technology. How did you guys know in 1972? Well, we understood the military-industrial complex, which is actually what is creating the death in Gaza by support of technological warfare, drones, AI, as we see today. We saw it going in that direction. So the other aspect is human emotion and greed. And I hear people say, that's a different, I say, well, what is different today other than technology? And how we can use that concept to further the whole struggle and connect people. Greed, envy, control, all that was present then. They are following a plan that has always been in place. We happen to be able to throw that, that movie with the big clock, we threw that wrench, that little bolt, and we clogged up the machine. And then other people from other communities saw what we were doing and listened and learned. And what is missing is the educational history of those collaborations and battles that on this ongoing war for a struggle. And to answer another concept, when you're, I love what you were talking about, the mentoring aspect. That was just so beautiful of how the elders, the mentoring of the elders, and what they were saying was simply this: the mentoring is the passing on their experience and knowledge. So human emotion has not changed. Their plan has always been the same. So what we're able to share is the major battles that we won in this ongoing war. To give you an example of the network itself, our network is composed of everybody who's on this call and then some. We have progressive pharmacists. One of our pharmacists worked for CVS on the weekends, but his main job, he negotiates these drug prices for the drugs from these pharmaceutical companies for 15 million Medi-Cal patients. We have individuals from community organizations. We have youth organizations. We have athletes involved. And when the call comes, I don't care where you are. If you want that person to talk to, you got to speak with Brianna. She knows, she's the expert in that area. And this is who we recommend. That is the kind of collaboration. I think Professor Steve mentioned it earlier. The expertise each and every person brings to the table. Whatever you need, our collaboration has it. But what does it do? And when you're talking to people, people ask us, how did you guys keep going in terms of when I'm speaking to anyone, whether it's an individual, each one teach one, or I'm speaking to several hundred thousands of people, with the feedback that you get. When one young man one day came up to me, he was, I don't know, he looked like about 220, he's about 6'4", big beard, walked up to me and gave me the biggest hug. I said, who are you? He said, years ago, I ate at the breakfast program. My mama, we didn't have no food or no money. Then you guys came and gave us groceries. Then my mama did, she couldn't give milk. We didn't have diapers. And then you guys came along with a program. And then my grandma needed a transportation. So we came up with the Seniors Against a Fearful Environment, which is now paratransit all over the nation. So that was done. And what happened was every other community saw that, because we would always say in the mantra, we're about Black people in particular, but we're about all oppressed people in general, because what is happening to us is happening to everyone. So I understand that ability to not having worked in that capacity before, because it's brand new. It is part of the knowledge is power, educate to liberate, that has not been passed on to our youth. And we mentioned last time, the reason is because they said no more will we ever have a movement of young people that connect together, and every community from women, LGBTQ, Black communities, and we also had an unbelievable relationship who actually our students who supported the Lumpen were the Arab Student League, Iranian students, Palestinian. So with this whole international concept of collaboration. So honestly, that is what is missing. And we told everyone before, we'd be more than happy to talk about in different session or have a session where we're talking about those historic collaborative efforts, all of us, how they were put together. And most important of all, we defined what common issues. Yeah, we want everyone to have a beautiful house and build these buildings, but what are the small things, the simple things that we can do, like feeding the children, working with the parent, creating alternative health care that we could come up from a community basis. All these concepts that we, not just we, but the community in general, and then the cross section of people from every walk of life, like we mentioned before, even our Confederate flag waving brothers and sisters from the Coastal Virginia and Chicago, as one example, part of the original Rainbow Coalition before Jesse and before it was adopted by the LD, and they recognize that fact too. So it was about all people. So those examples are there, and how they're done, and how it interacted and brought so many people to the table. And as Professor Steve talked about, in 2016, we had people from all over. We had people from every community saying, and they had linked arms. Chacha Jimenez was there. Amy Goodman couldn't make it because she had been with the fracking situation, and I think the FBI were looking for her at that time. But all these things came together to show this is a collaborative effort that was used before, and it's been tainted, it's been misdirected, and it's been really kept from generations on how to work together. So I just want to add that in, and I understand the feelings that people have, but that coaching concept, when you tell one person and they give you that feedback, that keeps you going in terms of taking you from a 2 to a 10.
And that is why we are focusing this conversation on care, to articulate the idea, to Thais's point, that one of the purest forms of care is to say in resounding fashion that I'm not free unless you are.
I also want to think about how historically, especially thinking in the context of late stage capitalism, and historically how when movements have developed, when there has been collaboration, right, there's been government interference to break down movements as they have occurred. So I think that we have seen so many instances where people do understand collaboration, where there's radical work happening. The government sees that and shuts it down, even to this point where they're trying to come up with policy to basically make protesting illegal on campuses, illegal in general. There's, the increased militarization and police presence, the technology that they use. There's just so many factors in late stage capitalism and kind of the damage done to ongoing generations that makes it very hard to organize, right? We even saw with the Stop Cop City movement, mutual aid being demonized and being called fraud and things of that nature. So I think that while times have changed and there's so much to learn from the history of the Black Panther Party, and texts about mutual aid always cite the Black Panther Party as just amazing opportunities that were taken and stands that were taken for mutual aid to get us where we are today. We have to think about the specific context that we're in right now. When I think about the AIDS epidemic and all the work that queer and trans individuals, particularly Black and Brown, have done, right, to now where people are more openly trans, right, there's so much policy that's destroying our community, right? That's increasing suicide attempts, for example, where it's like the farther we get, the more the government is suppressing us. And so while I do think it's still possible to organize and to liberate among these conditions, I do feel like we are also uniquely dealing with the compounding of different issues that makes it so hard to organize and to collaborate.
I'll give you a time. There's a video, one of our health videos. One is by Time about the East Coast and how we revolutionize healthcare in America. And on the video, one of the things that one of the sisters, Sister Sheba, quotes, she says, "While everyone else was out protesting, throwing rocks and bottles and hollering to the top of their lungs to a system that they know is oppressive, and no one suffered any greater oppression than members of the Black Panther Party and all the brothers and sisters in community. 90% of the FBI, CIA, and all the State Department, all the agencies were directed toward us. Why? Because instead of, we learned during the protests and the demonstrations, well, let's call them riots, starting way back with the Watts riot all the way when King was killed and 110 cities went up in flames, not Oakland and Sacramento, with some work we did there. But the aspect of how people saw this, and we learned, we said, we are destroying our own concepts and our own communities instead of looking at how we can build within our communities. So we spent our time in the face of police oppression. When we went to Sacramento, when they went to Sacramento, I joined the party till the next year. They looked at it and it was just happened to be the concept about self-defense and the right to bear arms of Constitution. Everything we did stood upon the Constitution of the United States. So when people look at what is organizing and what is creating a new way, the first level is what they always expect. People go out, they'll protest, they'll be mad, they'll curse, they'll holler, they'll destroy. Look what is happening now. They did the same thing, taking away Walgreens and pharmacies and making excuses, talking about crime is off the hook. This is the same thing they did before. So that formula they're using is not anything new. But what really gets them, when people are saying, okay, we know the conditions we live under, we know how oppressive they are. But the other aspect is, how are we sitting and coming up with a concept that one step at a time? Remember, the concept of revolution and change is not an event. I like to call it a Joe Biden step. It's one small step at a time, but stay in that and learning with that conscious concept. You know, when we first joined the party, so, you know, we had to read 32 books, including Before the Mayflower, Malcolm X, a whole ton of them. And then every day, for 2 hours a day, political education classes that would hook us into what was going on in the nations around the world, as well as within our community. What are the needs of the disabled community? What are the needs of our brothers and sisters in the LGBT community? What are the needs of our brown brothers and sisters on the reservations, our Asian? But what is happening? How is the world connected? And then our purpose was to break down Marxism-Leninism, dialectical materialism, which is the ideological concept we stand upon. And how do we break that down and take it to our community and say, these issues affect you too. We understand. We want to learn from you. What are the same things? And for us, we found out in the 10-point platform and program and the basic needs of life were the same things that were being reflected, from racism to denial of housing to the denial of mental health, physical health, which we decided to take upon ourselves to begin that process of what we call preventative health care, bringing from hospitals to clinics, which we still have one in Seattle, the Carol Dow Center, 3-story building, started by the Black Panther Party. And I think there's a dental clinic, I believe, still open that we began in on Oregon. And these are just a few of the examples. So that's what the focus is, not going out in the streets and protesting about something that we know. That is what we call expected behavior. And then no other action on, okay, what is the solution to deal with this? We know we've been dealing with police brutality and murder forever, okay? But the idea is, what about the basic needs of our community? More women are having misbirths. The medical care is worse than it's ever been. We're looking at the fact that more families, in particular Black families, are becoming homeless with this new wave of homelessness that has been designated. How do we feed those babies that are homeless? Breakfast programs are springing up all over. So the basic needs of the people, in terms of what things that we can begin to chip away at that mountain of despair, that mountain of what we call mental disparity, and all these other things that our people are faced with. So that part of that struggle and that knowledge and information, why do you think that they went to town in terms of so-called BS or critical race theory? Because they didn't want people to know the truth of what everybody's involved in and how we resolve the basic issues on our way up to what Elaine Brown and her project has done in building an apartment building here in Oakland according to income. No one in that state-of-the-art building in California, I think their 2-bedroom is about $3,500. State-of-the-art, no one will pay more than $300 from people coming back from prison, single moms, people from every community. And we set the stage and how she raised all these fundings and all this money to make it happen. We want decent housing, fit for the shelter of human beings. So focusing in on what we know needs to be done. And the protest, that's not, it goes nowhere. And again, what you said about the elected aspect, we never got a bag of groceries from Washington that said compliments of the president. You never got a house from keys to an apartment. You'll never get a keys to a vehicle or the kind of health care that we need. So it is all of us together. And I know how isolated it can feel when you didn't realize that there is a track record, and that's where we're coming from, as well as the method of the work. While they're thinking the streets are empty, that's because we're sitting resolving our own issues, and then embarrassing those. Just one last thing before I turn it back over to the host. When we created the Sickle Cell Anemia Foundation through Dr. Bert Small, who took a trip to China, we went twice. Richard Nixon, who was president, and Henry Kissinger had to tell him, Mr. President, they want to see the Black Panthers. You think he loved us anymore? First, Dr. Huey P. Newton went, and then a contingency of over 20 party members. And Dr. Bert Small was taught acupuncture, the cluster form, which was for PTSD and heroin addiction, still being used today because the Chinese community at that time was closed. So bringing these back, and we taught it to every community. The Native American clinics here in Oakland use that form of acupuncture. Roots Clinic, another, they all use it, and they open up one in his name in Boston. But that would not have happened if we had not created, and there would not be a cure, which may change the DNA for sickle cell anemia now. That was due to the fact that we sat down and said, what do we need to do? Sickle cell anemia, we're going to do something about that. We're not in the streets. We need a health clinic. We need a WIC program, women and infant children, which we created. We need something for our seniors, and definitely we need to teach our people. Well, those examples, everyone else saw them, and they applied them to their communities accordingly to those needs. So that is the relevancy of today, and we feel that's the reason why so many people and organizations and groups and people around the world and country are now taking a look and saying, it's about really planning our next moves. And most important, about caring about you and what you're doing, just as much as if I care about someone who's doing something here. And that is what was said, I think, by Brianna, where everybody comes together in a real caring attitude. My care is your care. There's no level of caring less or more. It's all one concept that needs to be addressed.
And I would say I definitely agree with the legacy of the Black Panther Party. As I said, it informs mutual aid organizing today so much. And I thank y'all for your contributions to that. I would say that what you're talking about, the collaboration, the community care of basic needs, I am seeing so much of that work done in mutual aid communities. As I was talking about before, the survival aspect is so important to get past, right? If people are hungry, it can be harder sometimes to organize, or if people cannot afford their medication for diabetes, it can be harder to organize. So I want to say that, like, I'm so proud and so happy that I do see that work happening in mutual aid spaces. I am working to continue to educate people on mutual aid. Collaboration was mentioned in my presentation last week with Uprise. I think we have so far to go, but I do see radical work being done every day, life-saving work being done every day in mutual aid communities. And so we definitely need more education. We need more collaboration. One of my points was applying appropriate theory. We need to keep educating ourselves, forming study groups, having conversations like this presentation that I gave last week. I think educators are key to radical movements, right? Keep educating people and then applying that theory appropriately and taking action, action that's oriented towards social justice. So I definitely agree.
And I just wanted to let you know right here and now that we are here to support you. That's what it's all about. Here to support you, and I mean that. So we expect to hear from you about how we can support all the efforts and weigh in as that support network for you in the important work and help you build. We don't have to be physically there. Well, Richard, come there, visit. But right now that's important for us to let you know that's what this is all about for us even coming on these community conversations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know Dr. McCutcheon has some thoughts as well, and I want to make sure we have some space for him as well, if that's okay.
Oh, just the comments behind everybody else, behind Ty and Dr. Ned, is that in 1970, I believe, on the cover of our newspaper, the headline was, well, the title of the cover was Hear the People Cry. And that title encompassed the direction the party was going in terms of survival through service to the people. This theme led to continued development and input to create the new survival programs. Now, remember, our survival programs weren't created just because somebody threw them out there from the Central Committee or from some cadre of the. There was a vacuum. There were vacuums to be filled in the community. There were needs to be filled. That was listening to the voices of the community, seeing the needs of the community. That was hearing the people cry. So in order to do that, it was a call and response, collaboration. Call came from the community. Our response to fill in the vacuum of those needs, create those programs that were needed and were wanted in the community. This is what continued to build that collaboration and that mutual support of the community and other communities for the Black Panther Party. Because we were able to reach and observe that other communities had the same issues as the Black community, and they in turn also understood that, hey, what the Black Panther Party is doing and what's occurring there in the Black community, that's what's happening here. It was call and response. They saw those communities and those organizations saw what was occurring with us and said, let's see if we can help them. And the party in turn, let's see what we have in common, what we can do together, what we can do together. Imagine 1969, with all the attacks that were going on against individuals of the Black Panther Party, against our chapter. If we did not have the collaboration and the support of the community and of the different organizations at that particular time, if we were isolated just as an organization, do you think we would have survived 1969? No, we would not have survived by ourselves, because our criticism of the government was so intense, so true, so to the point that it awakened people and irritated all of the U.S. government and its agencies, because we criticized the hypocrisy of the institutions, the agency, and the policy of American racism and its exploitation and oppression of marginalized people who make up the dominant part of this society. Without that call and response, without hearing the people cry, and in turn the responses that we received to build those collaborations out of need and out of the different communities' humanity, out of the humanity and the needs at those times, these were on display. This is what broke the back of J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI, and the law enforcement agency. They could not break that call and response behavior that was happening across the communities, not only within the Black community, but across communities, across groups, and across movements. We were coming to the mutual aid of each other, not for profit, but for the survival and well-being of each group and each individual community or nation state.
Thank you so much. We are like 10 colonial minutes from being at the end of our time together today, knowing that colonization should not hold us, but also respecting each other's time. I want to make sure that folks have a final word. Share something that you would like to share. If you've shared everything you want to share, great. And then we'll just say our gratitudes for everyone being here. This conversation has been so rich and so beautiful. I'm excited to hear more conversations in the future. And so let's just go around and do one last final word, and then we'll wrap up together today. And I know, Ty, you were about to say something earlier. Would you like to start us off?
I was just going to say to Dr. Ned that I am no stranger to connecting, all around the world with people, being disabled especially. I'm so reliant on, this virtual connection. Um, and yeah, I'd love to keep building together. I guess I know the question was about like, okay, like what the F do we do? Like name one concrete action. And I'll go with educate. you know, um, seek other people to learn with. As someone mentioned, be a student of social justice, be a student of liberation, remain teachable and open, and also teach others. And be open to what you don't know. There's so much to learn about the history of these movements. There's so much to learn from each other. And I would say don't be afraid to seek out educators, I can put my email, or someone can put my email in the chat, seek out learning from mentors as we talked about. And yeah, just make education a part of your organizing.
And just as general feedback, we've got your bios and info on how to contact you. So everyone that's listening, it will be available on our Facebook event. So you can follow these folks, learn more about what they do, and engage in the movement. Shailene,
Closing for
Go
me, I
ahead.
just want to everybody, all you wonderful people, you are not alone. And I understand that loneliness and that feeling when there isn't that connect. And you didn't realize, imagine if we had still been able to do what we did, and clinics and health clinics and schools and everywhere, you were the generation that would carry the torches to take it even to the next level. So that minor disruption of that information and knowledge and support and love and caring is here. And that's what we want to bring to the table. So I just want to let you know, we applaud you, we support you, we love you, and you are the ones who are going to continue this torch and keep everything alive. That's all I have to say.
And I just want to add, one of the things that moved me through the years, that academic learning, the experiential learning, the collaborative learning through the years, one of the things that no matter what personally was a part of my life, whether it was on the positive side or the negative side, what I encountered with others, that regardless of what that situation, how I viewed it, whatever, I looked at it, and then it took me back to something that I heard years ago, and it was just simply that I cried because I had no shoes until I met the man who had no feet. That's part of what pushed me, what pulled me. So with that, and with what everybody's brought to the table today, these last two sessions, hey, for me, it's been a plum pleasing pleasure. Thank you all for having us and for participating.
Yeah, I think my last final words would Ginaheon is thank you in my language, and I just have really deep gratitude for this conversation and for the words that were shared. I think I was brought up with the belief that things happen in the moments that they are meant to happen, and I really feel that. I feel like if this happened last week, it'd be very different. And so I just have a lot of gratitude for all of the work that all of you have done to get us to the places that we are at. For those who came before us, who have done the work to make sure that we are here, and whatever our circumstances may be, we have lineages of strength behind us, and that will carry through us. And I think that is the beauty of our communities, is that there is so much abundance if you take away a lot of the structures, and to be able to see our people for the beautiful, abundant people that they are, and building from that place is is abundance-based, is strength-based. And today I just feel that extra kind of uplift and push for all of us. And I will, one of the things that we take very seriously, and I hope that you take it in a good way and that you feel it, is that the people that we come across, the people that we meet, even virtually, that we will be holding you dear, and that we will be saying our prayers and praying for all of you and your journeys and your families, and for your well-being. And so just, thank you guys with all of my being for who you are and showing up today and sharing with me, and I hope to carry that goodness forward. So and that would be my invitation, is to everyone else, is to carry those good things forward. The way that we are invites others to be that way as well. And I feel that today. And so, just thank you guys.
What a beautiful last note, Shailene. Thank you. Yeah, thank you all for being here. Thank you for giving up a part of your Saturday to hang out with us, to engage in some really important conversations. I am always in awe and always have to practice restraint for these conversations, because these could go on for days and days. The stuff that we brought up is messy, complicated, and beautiful. And that's what's so cool about having these kinds of conversations. So thank you for being here. Thank you to our ASL interpreters. Thank you to our captioner. We're really excited to be able to make these as accessible as we possibly can. And it's only because they do their jobs. And so, Steph, do you have any final words too?
I'm just echoing my appreciation. May the conversations not end here, sitting in deep appreciation for the work that you do, for the care that radiates from your heart, from the communities that benefit from your presence, and the community members who benefit you. So thank you so much for being in community with us. It's an honor we never take lightly. And please, please, please enjoy your evenings.
Take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see y'all later.